In the village of Umuanuri, where the hills wore cloaks of deep green, the Anayo family lived under a silent curse. Their farm, once the most fertile, now yielded mega harvests. Their compound, once lively with laughter, was now too quiet, save for the drumming of rain on a leaky roof. The elders nodded knowingly. The problem, they said, was not in the soil or the sky, but on the family's own hearth. There sat the Ike Oma, the vessel of providence, a calabash of ancient dark polish, inlaid with a spiral of cowrie shells that mirrored the constellation that watched over Umuanori's birth. It held no food or water, but the family's shared spirit, their unity, their purpose, their fortune. For generations, it sat whole, and the Anayos thrived. Its fracture was as quiet as it was catastrophic. The night their father was buried, the three siblings, Ineka, Chidi, and Amina, sat in exhausted silence by the hearth. Without a touch, without a sound, a single clean crack split the calabash from rim to base. The cowrie shell seemed to dim, and from that moment, misfortune took root in their home like a stubborn weed. Years passed, the siblings drifted apart, carrying their pieces of grief. Ineka, the eldest, built a life of concrete and logic in the distant city as a civil engineer. She saw the family's decline as a series of solvable problems, bad irrigation, poor maintenance, and sent money, but her visits were brief, her solutions clinical. Chidi, the middle child, was a nomadic artist, his soul as restless as his hands were skilled. He saw the family's story as a tragic, beautiful tale, but one he observed from a distance through the lens of his camera or the stroke of his brush. Amina, the youngest, remained. She tended the failing farm, answered the villagers' pitying glances, and dusted the broken calabash on the hearth. She carried the weight of the fracture in her stooped shoulders and weary eyes. The family's spirit, like the vessel, was held together by habit and memory alone. The final straw was the flood. A seasonal downpour, which other homes weathered, breached their compound wall and drowned their last viable crop. The village head, an old friend of their father, came to deliver the hard truth. "The crack has grown too wide," he said, his eyes on the fractured gourd. "The world sees your family as broken, and so it treats you so. The Ike Oma must be made whole, or you will lose everything. The land, this house, it must be the blood of the ones who witnessed the fracture. The three of you must mend it." His words were a summons, a final, non-negotiable demand from the world itself. And so, with reluctance, duty, and a flicker of desperate hope, the scattered siblings were called home to face the symbol of their undoing. The reunion at the ancestral home was a brutal thing. The air was thick with unsaid words and competing sorrows. In the center of it on the low wooden table, lay the broken calabash. Ineka arrived first, her suitcase clicking on the hard floor. She unpacked not clothes, but tools, high-strength epoxy, precision clamps, microfiber cloths. "Emotion won't hold a structure together," she stated, examining the crack. "We need the right adhesive and a stable environment." She saw a faulty joint, a failure of material integrity. Her approach was clean, precise, and utterly detached. She carefully applied the modern glue, clamped the halves, and set a timer. But when she removed the clamps, the crack remained, the epoxy having shrunk and peeled away as if repelled by the calabash's very nature. Chidi watched with an artist's critique. "You're trying to erase the history," he chided. He had brought his own kit, gold leaf, lacquer, fine brushes. The break is part of its story now. We should honor it, make it visible and beautiful, like kintsugi. Where Ineka saw a problem to hide, Chidi saw a narrative to highlight. He cleaned the edges with reverence and began to apply the golden adhesive. But the gold would not bond, it flaked away. The vibrant lacquer beaded and slid onto the table like tears. The calabash refused to be merely beautified. Amina watched from the doorway, her heart sinking. Her siblings were speaking different languages, solving different puzzles. Ineka's word was one of force and function, Chidi's of surface and symbol. Both were ignoring the heart of the thing, that the Ikeoma was not an it, but a we. Frustration boiled over. "You're treating it like a specimen," Chidi accused. "And you are treating it like a decoration," Ineka retorted. "We need a solution that actually works." "Perhaps the solution isn't in your lab or my studio," he shot back. Their raised voices seemed to vibrate in the very air. As they argued, a terrible, sudden silence fell upon the calabash. Then, With a sound like a sigh, the single crack spider-webbed. The vessel didn't just separate, it shattered into a dozen jagged fragments, scattering across the floor, its cowrie shell stars skittering into the shadows. The fight died instantly. All three siblings stared, breath caught in their throats. The magnitude of their failure was now physical, multiplied, and irredeemable. Eneka's formulas had no answer for this. Chidi's aesthetics were meaningless. Amina's silent hope lay in pieces on the ground. The calabash was not just broken, it was destroyed, and with it, it seemed the last of their Nayo fortune. For a long time, no one moved. The despair was a tangible weight. Then, Amina made a soft sound. Not quite a cry, but a release of breath held for years. She knelt, not among the largest pieces, but by a single, lonely cowrie shell, nestled against the leg of the table. "This one," she whispered, her voice finding strength in the memory. Grandmother said this shell was added when Uncle Obi returned from his long journey, sick and heartbroken. The family nursed him for a full season. It's the story of not giving up on someone lost. The words hung in the quiet. Chidi, drawn by the specificity, knelt. He found a fragment with a distinct, wavy green. "And this mark," he said, his artist's eye seeing the story in the pattern, "was for the great flood when the river swallowed the lower fields. The family moved uphill together and built a new home. A story of resilience." Neka remained standing, her arms crossed, a statue of logic against the tide of emotion. But her eyes were fixed on a piece near her foot. It had a tiny drilled hole, long forgotten. The memory surfaced, unbidden and vivid. "This hole," she said, her voice unsteady as she finally sank to her knees. "We were children. I tried to hang it as a lamp. I made the hole, and father was so angry. But then he helped me string it, and we hung it that very night. It's the story of forgiveness." That was the turning point. They were no longer facing a repair job, but an archaeological dig into their own shared soul. They stopped being an engineer, an artist, and a farmer. They became 3 storytellers, 3 rememberers. Systematically, they worked. Neka's logical mind excelled at sorting the pieces, finding which fragments nestled against which. Chidi's visual genius guided the reconstruction, seeing the whole picture in the chaos. Amina brought a humble pot of uji paste, made from the last of their good green, a glue that was also sustenance, traditional and nourishing. They worked through the night. They argued gently over memories. They laughed at long-forgotten foolishness. They wept for their parents. They spoke of their own fractures. Neka's loneliness in the city, Chidi's fear of being rootless, Amina's burden of stillness. With every confession, a fragment found its home. With every shared laugh, the uji paste set stronger. As dawn's first light pierced the window, Amina placed the final piece. The calabash was whole again, but transformed. It was now a map of their history, a constellation of dark, graceful lines connecting the cowrie shell stars. It was not a restoration, but a rebirth, stronger and more beautiful for having been broken. The first sunbeam hit it directly. The cowrie shells did not just reflect the light, they glowed from within, a soft, warm radiance that filled the room. A profound sense of peace, of rightness, settled over the house. The change was not magical, but it felt miraculous. In the coming days, the well, which had been brackish, gave sweet water. The seeds Amina planted days before sprouted with astonishing vigor. The roof, when tested by the next rain, was sound. The villagers marveled at the restored fortune of their Nayo home, but the siblings knew the true source of the mending. The vessel they had repaired was not just the one on the hearth, it was the one between them. They had not fixed their lock by mending a calabash. They had mended the calabash by finally fixing their hearts. The Ike Omar stood whole, a testament to a new truth, that a family, like a vessel, is strongest not when it is flawless, but when it is bound together with love and story at every single seam.